I'm Michael Sapir. I'm 16 and I also attend the Jerusalem High School.
What does a school day look like? Is there something like a general routine you do every day, or how do you spend your time at school?
It's generally absolutely I forgot the word suddenly. No, spontaneous. I mean, there are classes which are usually at a set time, or at least you know what time the class is going to be on that particular day. But other than that, there isn't any general routine everyone has to go by. I mean, some students make themselves a routine. I don't know, they're right, but there isn't any kind of enforcement of a routine at all.
Except the Judicial Committee.
Yeah.
It's 4 days a week at 9, and that doesn't ever change. And same the school meeting, 1 day a week, very specific time, doesn't change. Everything else is totally spontaneous.
You learn from living. You learn, and we feel you learn much more this way. You learn relevant things from relevant activities. Okay, you may not, like, I don't know algebra, but, if it doesn't interest you, it's probably because you haven't ever needed to use it. And if suddenly you come upon something where you need to use a skill that you don't have, or knowledge that you don't have, then the way it works is that you go and learn it. Unlike in a conventional school where you don't know it, oh, too bad, next year I might learn it and I'll wait till then.
Some people say, okay, you can learn different kinds of things if you're interested in it, but aren't there any subjects which are so important that you should learn them, even if you don't want or if you're not really interested?
We believe that the things that are so vital that you can't live without them, you'll reach the point when you want to read a law to find out what exactly the law is, to know if you're allowed to do something, and then, I don't know how to read. And okay, so you'll find someone else to read it to you, but eventually we see that people faced with something that they don't know how to do will want to do it. And if they want to do it, then they'll learn how to do it. If it's such a basic thing, then because you can't go on without it, you won't go on without it. And the things that aren't that basic, then maybe we shouldn't be learning them if we don't want to. I think we learn a lot from having conversations with people, and it's actually one of the most basic types of learning that isn't very appreciated in the conventional system. The conventional system, if you talk during a class with your friend, God forbid, then you could be punished for that. But it's the most basic way of transferring information, of gaining knowledge, and like reading. Reading is also a very basic way of learning that also in a conventional school is generally forbidden. You can't just sit there and read, and in our school you do. You sit and read a lot. You really learn to go and get what you need, and I don't think this will stop. In 3 years when I'm out of school, I think it will continue with me, and I'll keep on, getting what I need.
How do kids learn how to read when they don't learn it in classes?
We have no idea, I can tell you.
They come in not knowing how to read,
yeah,
then a year later suddenly...
There's about 5 students that came the beginning of the first year, didn't know how to read, and now they know how to read. We have no idea how or when they learned how to read, but they learned how to read, so we're leaving them alone.
Do they know how they learned to read?
I don't know.
They might.
They might. We don't.
It's nobody's business to ask them, usually.
They're content, so why get in their way?
Well, first of all, age mixing is we see it as one of the greatest things about our school, because while in a normal school, a conventional school, I would be forced to spend my time with people who happen to have been born the same year as I was. Here, I spend my time with people who happen to have the same interests as me, who happen to have who I happen to have common grounds with, to people I actually can enjoy my time with. It wouldn't be true to say that it's like there's completely no difference between a 5-year-old and a 15-year-old, because that would just be a lie. But we feel it's wrong to arbitrarily say that a 12-year-old can enter this class and an 11-year-old can't. That doesn't make any sense to us. People really do spend their time with kids of very different ages, and there also is lots of teaching going on between age groups. There was a 7-year-old who taught me Portuguese for one lesson. A 8-year-old who taught Russian for 2 months or so to a very large group. And the class only stopped because the students lost interest, but she was willing to go on. On the other hand, we also have a philosophy class where kids from all ages cramp up in the room to listen, and a lot of them don't understand it very well, and a lot of them do. From experience, I know that compulsory external evaluation often does a lot of harm and not much good. Usually a person knows themselves best, and if someone comes and every day tells them, you're not very good at math, doesn't necessarily mean they're not good at math, but it does mean that they may now think that they're not good at math.
And how are decisions made, especially in your school? Do you have certain institutions for that, or how do they work?
Well, we have several institutions. We have the General Assembly, which makes broad decisions about the budget and includes the parents and students and staff. And we have the school meeting, which meets weekly and includes only students and staff, what we call the school community, and makes laws and decisions about behavior, about internal things, not things that would concern the parents.
Why do you have rules and laws?
Well, this is what separates us from free schools. Free schools allow the students to just be free and, beat each other up as long as, I don't know. But what makes us democratic is that we have these institutions to protect our freedom and to make laws that protect us from one another. Most of the laws don't restrict people for irrational reasons, like you have to learn math at least 1 hour a week or things like that. Most laws concern how you should behave so as not to harm another person's freedom and not to harm your own freedom. So there are laws against violence, laws against disruptive behavior, things like that. That they really make sense. They really help us. They wouldn't be there if they didn't make sense and didn't help. There's some issues that have their own part in the school meeting, where you can just propose something when you get to that section of the agenda. But for laws, it's very strict about proposing it through the appropriate paperwork at the right time. The Judicial Committee, that we call the Committee for the Rights of the Individual, I think is the heart of the school. It's what is the most sacred thing in our school, because we feel that that's what separates us from chaos. Generally, the punishments make sense, and they really do seem like a consequence to your action. And usually, if you feel that you shouldn't have consequences to your action because there was nothing wrong with it, then you'll appeal. Generally, the Judicial Committee makes good decisions that people agree with, or at least don't disagree with, even if they don't like the decision very much. I'm one of the people who got brought up to the Judicial Committee.
Tens of times.
I'm I think third place or something.
The most.
You know, you get sued, you deal with it. It's not something very special. I think there's maybe one student at the whole school who has never been sued, and maybe a couple more that were sued but never found guilty for anything.
Most of the staff has never been brought up simply because they never really
Did anything wrong.
that anyone wanted to bring them up.
And every now and then there's something that someone did that was just outright wrong, like played with a knife, built a dangerous structure. It was a very big issue that hasn't really. Well, okay, it's been resolved, but people still talk about it. All kinds of things.
What are usual consequences that you get?
Well, because cleaning at the end of the day is something everybody has to do, and every day.
Every
so
day.
A very, very common punishment that people get for all kinds of things is to do someone else's cleaning duty for them, and then a lot of times there's get him a piece of candy, get him a roll, just nice things to compensate for what you did. The Judicial Committee makes decisions about people who do things against the law. Someone breaks the law, they know the Judicial Committee will get them for it. They can't just go and do whatever they want. And because of that, we feel it's completely necessary. It's not something we could do without. We don't see it as a problem that people, instead of solving a problem themselves with a conflict with someone else, they sue them and have the Judicial Committee take care of that. We feel that that's also a solution. You don't have to only solve conflict by talking to the person and becoming best friends or something. Sometimes, you just know, like, there's not a battle to be fought. You just sue the person, get out of your mind, and enjoy your day, because sometimes a conflict can just ruin your day, ruin your week, and suing can sometimes be just the right thing to do.
No.
At school, first of all, there's a very big problem of violence in schools in Israel. An immense problem. I think Israel is one of the schools with the most violence in schools in the world. Maybe second place, I think, or even first. And in our school, you don't see the kind of violence you see in other schools in Israel. In Israel, you can see serious, dangerous fights in schools that can injure a child. In our school, there is violence, but playful violence. Kids just rolling around, beating each other up in a playful way without any intention to harm each other. And there's complete intolerance for actual violence in order to harm other people. If a person comes and punches someone, they could easily just get kicked out of the school for that one act. I know there was a time when I threatened to cause serious bodily harm to another student, and then tried to do it. I think that was the worst thing I ever did. I got suspended for 3 days for that.
Anybody ever did.
People sometimes, when they meet kids from the school, they say like, "Oh, but these are special kids. These can't be just any kids from their school." And we tell them, "No, these are just kids from the school. These are they weren't especially amazing in their old schools. Weren't considered especially amazing. Many of the kids in our school, the nicest kids even, were kicked out from their old schools for violence. It's a very free environment where people get to express themselves, express their intelligence, and use their potential." Well, I was very miserable in my former schools. Kelly was pretty okay, generally.
I was completely happy.
Yeah. And I'd gone for my first 6 years of grammar school, which I went to a particular school where I was very unhappy, but it was just for the first 6 years. It didn't go on past that. Then I went to a different school, which was supposedly alternative, what they called half free, experimental, I was very unhappy there, and eventually we met. We knew for a long time one of the families several of the families that were starting the school, and at some point one of the families came over, and we just happened to talk about it, and me and my mother both fell in love with this concept. Usually, if a kid comes in without having first been in a conventional school, they won't have any problem with the system. It's a very natural system. Kids that come in without first being spoiled by a conventional school, they usually just, blossom. It's completely natural to them.
How is it for you to vote on who is going to be a staff member?
That I can say has got to be one of the toughest experiences of my life, because we sat in a room for 10 hours total discussing this with most of the staff present, and there were heaps of suggestions. I think when we finally got to the stage of actual concrete proposals for the setup of staff for next year, we had I think 14, something like that, 14 proposals, and it was very tough voting on them. It was very tough discussing it before. It was very tough proposing the proposals, but we did it, and we did it because it was important that it gets done. We couldn't just say, oh well, whatever, because we had to reach a decision. We couldn't just leave it as it was. You may not like this law, but you know that without it, it will be even worse. So there isn't anything that we don't like and can't accept and can't change. It's either you can change something or you can accept it. There aren't any unacceptable, crazy, bad things going on. It is true that some families just couldn't send their kid to the school because they couldn't afford any tuition, and it's very hard to get a full tuition. I think the only time that a student from a single family, that was the only student from that family, I think the only time that such a student got a full tuition was when there's actual fundraising for their full tuition. It's not simple. And because of that, some families just don't send their kid because they can't afford it, and they wait for us to be able to lower the scholarships they could come. The way it works, there's a few different levels of acceptance by the government, and we want basically to get the same thing that some Orthodox schools get. They get funding. And basically the government doesn't care what you do in the school. It doesn't have to have a curriculum or anything. And basically it was a standard that was invented because of Orthodox education in Israel, and we want to get that because it's available. If they, for some reason, want to give us full acceptance and give us good funding,
Which they won't.
we wouldn't say no.